That's when it was a real race.
It was a real race. Everybody got a chance to see what the Z would do. And this puppy will run.
It will run. Now get to work.
All right, I got to work.
Welcome to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Welcome to a new episode of Sam's Garage. First up, Sam and Doug prep for the next leg of the great race. Then Sam installs new Wilwood big brakes on the Chevy Bel Air. Victory Motorsports helps complete the fuel system on the SC300. And Sam installs new heads and an intake manifold on his 454 engine. The guys prepare to head out from Binghamton, New York, and set a course for Providence, Rhode Island, all while taking in the scenery on the great race.
Here we are in Binghamton, New York. We're on our way to Montgomery, and the final destination today is going to be Providence, Rhode Island. Yesterday we saw a bear. Who knows what we're going to see today, but I know that I'm loving seeing Doug in that car for 8 hours a day, every single day for 9 days. It takes a lot to do this race. You really have to love each other and enjoy each other. And as you can tell, it's a family affair as well. Everybody's here hanging out. They brought family, they brought friends. They're doing the whole great race together. They got a support team. This is a real deal.
I've already set our clock to the atomic clock. Now what I'll do is I'll take and I'll annotate. And what I mean by that is I got to take a look and I've got to interpolate what our speeds are going to be as we're entering and what we're exiting. Then we have certain time marks we have to step up speed. So then I've got to write down how many seconds it takes us to accelerate or to deaccelerate. So I'm looking at all of our acceleration times, all of our deacceleration times, everything that we're doing because we have to be close. We've been very fortunate that we've got so close on one segment to be 1 second. We've got many 1 seconds and 2 seconds, and then we've had a couple that we've really blown, that we've gone way out of the way. Well, now we're trying to make up time to catch it up. We wound up with about a minute trying to catch it up. We were off, but we were all up 7, so we had to fly like a bat out of hell in order to catch everything up.
It's very hard what he does, but the driver, it's very hard what I do because I got to keep this thing at times at 10 miles an hour, 15 miles an hour, which is a crawl, and you're going through beautiful country road, and you got to keep an eye on that speedometer because if you take your eyes off of it, you're going to sway left to right. So you can't do that. And then on the car, it's really hard. Think about these old cars here with the cooling systems they have. When you're going 15, 20 miles an hour, there is no airflow. So you're relying on the fans and the cooling system to keep everything cool. And these old cars with no horsepower, they're really lugging up these hills. So it's a real challenge both on the car and the driver. And this is what makes this low-speed race so much fun.
This is a 1931 Ford Model A Victoria. Victoria is a little bit on the rarer side. They made like 30 body styles, and it's a smaller window. On the back side you can see, and seems to be a big fan favorite. People like it because it's a little bit different. So we call her Vicky for that.
We are on our way to Providence, Rhode Island. We are going to meet our ladies there as well. It's going to be a big welcome. Providence, Rhode Island should be beautiful. See you there.
Originally from England, of course, born in Lancashire and grew up in West London. For the last 30 odd years, I've lived in Portland, Maine. So we've got a car from Maine in the great race. Steve's come all the way from London. to be my navigator driver.
So I've known Fraser for more or less 50 years, applied for the Great Race in 2018. I do the majority of the driving because Fraser's a better navigator than myself. We got 2 aces last year and today we've got our second ace, which is having a ball of a time.
We made another day here at Providence, Rhode Island. This time it was a special treat because Julie met me and Deanne met Doug at the finishing line. Well, it's not the finishing line, it's today's finishing line. We do 9 days of this. And let me tell you, today was a very big challenge. Lots of congestion, lots of traffic. We had to really think on our toes out there. We had 3 time delays today. This is the first day we had 3. So we're getting better and better as we do this. But like I said, the greatest part of this is seeing all these cars and all these people go this many miles in real strenuous conditions, and everybody on the streets absolutely loves them.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. The Chevy Bel Air receives a new set of 13-inch front Wilwood rotors with 6-piston calipers and an upgraded master cylinder.
So while Julie and I are still waiting for our fuel system, it'll arrive one day. We're gonna go ahead and install the front brake system from Wilwood. As you noticed last week, we installed the rear system with the Quick Performance 9-inch rear end. So this week, we're gonna go ahead and upgrade the front system. Even though it's got a disc brake upgrade on it, this is gonna be a lot more braking power and look better. What we're doing also is gonna replace the master cylinder with this nice polished unit from Wilwood, along with this proportioning valve that's fully adjustable for the rear bias. That's gonna make the braking power a lot better. And this is a 13-inch rotor. We're taking a 10-inch rotor off. There's a 22-inch wheel, so it's just gonna look better all around.
This piece is really nice, by the way. I don't think we've ever...
That is nice. It's all nice. It's all billet aluminum, very nice. So the first step is going to be to put on this bracket. And this bracket goes on and it sandwiches the toe bracket. Well, you have to look at it like this and you'll see that this protrudes further than this. So I need to put a shim under there. We're going to put it right here in between the spindle flange and the bracket. This is important because this is where your tie rod lives. So you got to put it back. Now when you guys are doing this, you see there's 10 holes. So you have to determine which one's yours. So what I do is I put 2 in there. I did not assemble this bracket. It came from Wilwood like that. So anytime you guys do not assemble something, it's a good idea and just double check the bolts. If you guys notice this arrow, that's pointing towards the front of the car. We're going to turn it upside down, put it on the hat, put on our hardware. Now this is not a race application, so you don't need safety wire. So the next step is to put on our rotor. You can see that there are 3 countersunk holes. That's going to be for right here on the hub. Just like an OEM setup, they want you to bolt the rotor onto the hub. This Wilwood caliper requires you to put the pads in before you put the caliper on. But because I have to make sure that I'm straight and I don't have to shim it or I have to shim it, I'm gonna do it dry and then we'll see what we need to do. Right there, you'll see you have more gap on the right side than the left side. Make sure your hands are clean when you're handling the pads. So as long as your rotor spins freely with no noise and you look at the pad and you got a good air gap, your shimming is perfect. Now, all we gotta do is install the brake line. So we got the brakes pretty much done. It's about 90%. All the hard stuff is on there, but I got to plumb all new brake lines. Not because of the Wilwood change, but just because whoever did it did a bad job. So we're going to do a new line from the back to the front, and then 2 new ones coming off our proportioning valve that's adjustable from Wilwood. But doesn't it look good?
Looks great.
It really does. Even
really
the wheels
does.
down there,
Yeah.
you know,
Good
red to
job.
match with the rear.
Yeah.
Big rotors to fill in that 22-inch space we have with the wheels.
Yeah, because that was really noticeable. The wheels, you know, you could see right through them, and the brakes were kind of small. It just didn't look right.
And you know, Wilwood's my favorite. It's the best bang for the buck big brakes you can buy. With Nopi coming back in 2025, it's time for you guys to get back into your import world. But whether you have an import or a domestic, race-winning brands are going to have all the parts you need to make a nice, reliable engine build. I got my videographer here, and he has been interested in getting into the Honda world. That's where I started, you know, starting to build engines in my shop with a Honda. He's building his first engine. It's going to be a B20 VTEC motor. He's got a GSR right now. It finally killed the bearing, so I said, you know what, let's build you a B20, make more displacement. We'll put pistons and rods in it. That way, if he ever wanted to add boost, he'll be more than capable to handle that added pressure. He put in his own crankshaft. First, I had the machine shop bore his engine out. Didn't have him assemble anything. We got the bearings from Ewing Auto Machine. I had Nick go out and clean his crankshaft with soapy water, clean the engine out. Nick's gonna next put in his pistons, put the head on, put it together, and build himself a very cool Acura Integra swapped Honda Civic EG. You guys can build it too. If you guys wanna go fast, you wanna make a whole bunch of horsepower, check out race-winning brands.
Welcome back to more Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU. Victory Motorsports is back at Sam's Garage to help install the remainder of the fuel system on the Lexus SC300.
This week we are continuing on with our Nopi SC300 project. I got Brian and Edwin from Victory Motorsports back in the shop to help me with the fuel system. We're going to be installing some Victory Motorsports fuel injectors. We're going to be plumbing our fuel system, fuel pressure regulator, and a fuel pressure sensor, right? Now tell me the importance of the sensor.
Well, the good thing about a sensor is if you're actually on the dyno, you can monitor everything. The ECU control can monitor all your fuel pressure, everything. So if you do start having issues, it detects it in there and shuts it down. You can set parameters to fail safe for the motor, so you won't hurt the engine. The other benefit of it is everything can be monitored inside from the tuner inside. He doesn't have to ask anybody to come outside watching the gauge. It's all new technology, just work it inside the ECU.
And it makes for a safer dyno session.
Yes.
This is going to be the fuel feed on this car. We went with a Dash 8 size. Most factory applications, you're pretty okay with using the factory feed line for most street car applications because you're usually going to be somewhere in the 500 to 600 horsepower range. But when you want to step up that horsepower and you need more fuel requirements, we step up to a Dash 8. It's also really common for us to step up to a Dash 8 feed when we run ethanol because ethanol requires a lot more fuel. Because whenever you run fuel line, you do not want it near any moving parts and you definitely don't want it near any heat. Obviously, that's going to be a fire hazard and we definitely don't want that to happen. We use these insulated clamps to hold it. Whenever you run a fuel line, we like to go ahead and run it and just kind of find something to zip tie the line to first, so that way we can get our length, and then we'll go back and add our clamps in to make sure that it's permanently secured to the car, because you don't want anything being able to rub the lines. You don't want your lines hanging down and maybe dragging over a speed bump or anything like that, because it's going to chafe through that line and it's going to develop a fuel leak. And if you have an exhaust running under the car, you're definitely going to be in the territory of being able to catch the car on fire, and we don't want that. A couple of tips first when you install fuel injectors. The biggest thing is you really have to lube the O-rings before you put them in, because if you accidentally pinch an O-ring, let's say this wasn't a fresh build and this was just some car that you're working on, or maybe the car is hot, it came in for a repair, you're pulling the injector out, you're not always going to wait until the car is all the way cooled off, so you really want to make sure you lube those O-rings so they don't get pinched, because you're not going to see a crack, and the second that rail has fuel pressure, it's going to spray fuel everywhere. We're going to be using Victory Motorsports 1300cc injectors. It's a brand that we make in-house, and the reason we do is we've had a lot of issues buying injectors from companies, and it's not so much that they don't make a good product, because they all work and they all work great. But at least with us supplying our own product, we can back the product. The customer service is there on our hands because we're the ones making the product. And we also offer a limited lifetime warranty with our injectors due to a manufacturer defect. We have anywhere from 550cc to 2200cc injectors. The 2200s are the only injectors that are not ethanol rated because they are not stainless steel cores. So all the other injectors are going to be stainless steel cores. So if you run ethanol through the injector, you're not going to have an issue with the injector corroding. The most important thing about injectors is going to be your dead time data. When you're setting up the tune in that ECU, you've got to make sure your dead time data is accurate. And an issue that we've run into with injectors is whenever you buy a set of injectors, a lot of injector companies are using dead time data that was done on a single batch of injectors, and every single injector thereafter uses that same dead time data. So we actually have a machine from Dynocom Industries that allows us to do customized dead time data per injector if your ECU allows for it. Otherwise, we can do custom data per set of injector that we put out, and it's gonna make the car run a lot better. It's gonna give you more accurate fuel trims, and the car is gonna idle a lot smoother.
Man, that looks awesome. Brian, you did an awesome job. Edwin, you did a good job with the feed line as well. Very cool. All we got to do is make sure you guys run a vacuum line to the boost reference or vacuum reference on the fuel pressure regulator, because that is a 1-to-1 rising regulator, which means
for every pound of boost that you increase, it's going to increase your fuel pressure with it, and that is going to drastically affect your fuel flow from the injectors. Whenever you run into situations where you're having fuel pressure issues, you'll notice that it takes a lot more fuel in your tune to make up the difference.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NHOU. Sam makes progress on his 454 big block engine by installing new cylinder heads, a camshaft, and intake manifold.
So I got my 454 big block on the Easy Run engine test stand. There's a long story with it. Let's just say it's out of my boat. But now it's going to be a great candidate for a nice build-up. I'm going to be using these rectangular port high performance 454 cast iron heads. The ones that are on the block now are smaller oval ports designed for torque. I'm going to be installing the heads along with the Edelbrock camshaft from Comp Camps, the camshaft and all the valve train components needed to complement that camshaft. And then next time, we're going to be putting on the carburetor and making this thing run. All right, so I've removed the original cylinder heads. First, by removing the valve train, the rocker arms, the push rods, and the guides all come out. Pulled off the cylinder heads. Then I went ahead and removed the retainer for the roller lifters and pulled out the camshaft, cleaned everything up, and put on my new cylinder heads. They're new old cylinder heads. They're rectangular port cylinder heads. So they're going to give me a lot more horsepower because they'll give me more RPM. Now when it comes to the rocker arms, I have two sets I can choose from. But if I want to use the gold ones, I have to get new push rods because my roller is at the inside edge of my valve tip. So I'm not going to use these because I have to get new push rods. Then I added my timing set. I went with the original timing set because it's straight up and down. New camshaft is in. I'm going to go ahead and put my Summit Racing timing cover on, then go ahead and put on my intake manifold. So as you can tell, I went with the factory rocker assembly for now because after looking, I cannot find the push rods. So to make this run, I'm going with the factory valve train, and there's nothing wrong with that. This is going to be a street application. This will work just fine in the street application. So now we got the rocker assembly on, put a period on that. Then we're going to go ahead and put on the intake manifold. Now when you guys are doing the intake manifold, you saw that I put a little bit of glue around where the water jackets are. That way it just gives me a little bit of extra protection there. Then the strips that go across the valley, I put glue on both sides of it so it doesn't push through. All right, so we were gonna put our billet timing cover on there, and if you look, you put the gasket on there, and the holes don't line up. And then you put the timing cover on there, holes don't line up. So for all you customers out there and you wonder why your cars take a little bit longer sometimes, it's because this could have been on a Friday, and now I gotta wait 3 or 4 days for a timing cover to come on. This is a Gen 6, I'm gonna go ahead and just use the plastic cover that comes from the dealership. Same thing with my valve covers. So in the meantime, Julie and I are gonna put on the valve covers to see how they look.
It looks great.
Doesn't it look great? We'll go ahead and put on our hardware so that our valve covers don't fall off, and then, since we don't have a distributor yet, go ahead and cover up the hole for the distributor so nothing falls in. All right, so what did we learn today? We learned to be patient because there's gonna be times where parts are not gonna be correct. There's gonna be times where parts are gonna be on back order. And sometimes you have to improvise, maybe wait for the part to come, and you customers out there, be a little bit patient with us. So this looks really nice. Edelbrock air gap intake manifold for a 454 looks really nice. I got ports for days when it comes to both coolant sensors, heater hoses. So this is a big block, as you guys can see. This is my third one that I've built. There's nothing like a torque of a big block, guys. And man, look at those exhaust ports. They're huge. They're as big as the intake ports almost. Those heads are gonna flow a lot more than the heads that came off. They're heavy because they're iron, but they're gonna make the horsepower. This is very cool. I can't wait to fire this thing up and see what it sounds like when Wade gets here.
Be sure to check out Sam's Garage on these other media platforms. Send us questions and feedback to info@samsgaragetv.com. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Sam's Garage. Sam and Doug continue their adventure on the Great Race. The Bel Air got a new set of front brakes. The fuel system on the SC300 is now complete. And Sam's Big Block got some new heads and an intake manifold.